Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Brever, and alongside me is Logan Camden, and you already know the drill. We are going to be breaking down all of today's NFL Week 12 action, starting with the Sunday night game. This slate wasn't necessarily loaded with stacked games on paper, but this was one that I was looking forward to. Rams, Eagles. And it was just an absolute statement from the Philadelphia Eagles, particularly Saquon Barkley. Logan has a historic performance. He becomes just the 10th player ever with 300 yards from scrimmage in a game, and he does so in a dominant Eagles win. Philly is now sitting here at 9-2. They haven't lost since their bye 7 weeks ago. Is there any reason after this game to not consider them a major tier 1 Super Bowl threat? Or are you convinced of that by this performance?
Define tier 1. Is tier 1 a tier with the Chiefs and the Lions?
I would say so, yeah. On equal or very, very similar footing to those teams. And some would throw the Bills in there.
The only separator between them is the coaching. It's just like Nick Sirianni. Like, that's the only distinction I'd make. This team is uber talented. This defense really seems like they figured it out. And it's encouraging too, right? Because this team has always had talent on the defensive end. It was about them putting it all together. And it's not uncharacteristic of defenses, working out kinks and figuring out how to get the machine rolling as the season starts. But the Eagles defense has really figured it out. I think so. And the big difference is Saquon Barkley, man. He makes all the difference. Like, he just puts them over the top. It's like the Niners last year, right? You got Ayuk, you got Debo, you got Kittle, you got all this skill position talent. You got the great offensive line, and then, you get, an MVP level season out of Christian McCaffrey, and all of a sudden you're put over the top. That's the exact same way I feel about Saquon Barkley, right? You got all the talent. You have the best offensive line he's ever ran behind, one of the best in the league. They're strong in the trenches, right? They've got a quarterback that I trust a decent amount, right? An above average guy in Jalen Hurts. You've got elite skill position talent. And you've got the defense to back them up. It's hard putting a team in there, but I do think they belong. I guess the Bills probably are the next team.
I think the Bills are probably the four.
Those are probably the four teams, though. Those are the two favorites in the AFC and NFC to me. And every single week, Carson, the New York Football Giants continue to look dumb and dumber that they didn't re-sign Saquon Barkley. What he's doing is some really historic stuff out of this season. You mentioned what he does in this individual game. On the season, Saquon Barkley has the 6th most scrimmage yards through the first 11 games of a season since 2000. Right now, he's also averaging the 10th most scrimmage yards per game in NFL history with 149.9, basically 150 scrimmage yards per game. There's just no holes on this team. I don't look at a single area of this group and go, wow, this is where this aspect of this team is going to let them down. Last year, I called the Eagles getting upset by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the wild card round. And I was alone by myself basically on that island. And why was it? Well, the second half of the season, the Eagles had that monumental collapse, right? They had started out red hot, and they had one major flaw. That flaw was their secondary was susceptible to getting burnt on big-time shot plays. And I thought the Buccaneers had a really good recipe to exploit that with Mike Evans, with Chris Godwin, with their vertical passing attack, and what Baker Mayfield can do. I don't feel that way this year. Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean and Darius Slay have been three of the best corners, like the best, one of the best corner trios in football, right? Cooper DeJean taking over the slot as a rookie. Mitchell, who was my defensive rookie of the year. That was the one area that they needed to address after the letdown in last year's playoffs. And they did that. The defensive front has always had talent. And I think they got better, right? They lost Reddick, but they replaced him. The defensive front is monstrous. This is arguably the best front four in all of football. Yeah, I think they belong there, Carson. And it may have taken us a little bit to come around to it, but I think it was warranted, right? The Eagles had come up short in a few big spots, but they've been on a roll, and they scare me, man. They scare me as much as the Lions, dude. With the way they're playing football right now,
yeah,
I would not want to run into the Eagles, man. They seem like a buzzsaw. I think they're one of the four most complete teams in football. I think they belong.
I absolutely think that they're in that top tier, and those would be my four teams who I consider legitimate top tier Super Bowl contenders. And you could really strongly argue that nobody's playing better than Philadelphia right now. Detroit has been basically equally dominant. I don't want to overlook what they're doing because they've been so consistent with it throughout the year, whereas Philly got off to a slower start to the season. But this was a team that on paper coming into the year, you looked at and you could have made a really strong argument. It's the most talented in football. It has the most ability from position group to position group of any roster in football. But we also saw a really, really talented roster last year that underachieved because of coaching, because of a rough year from Jalen Hurts, because of specifically just their complete underachievement on the defensive end. And so I do think that there was some skepticism coming into this year, and they did have some bumps in kinks to work through early in the year, but they're just playing absolutely outstanding football. And they look like the most talented team in football right now, playing up to their potential. It almost feels like the 2022 Eagles right now. This game does, where I'm not saying that there aren't differences, but you think about the key components. The pass rush that year was historically great. This game, though, was as dominant a performance from a pass rush as I feel like I've seen all season, because it's not just that they rack up a handful of sacks. It's the speed with which they are winning on the edge. Brandon Graham, dude, still can't block him at 36 years old. And the Kobe Dean, Jalen Carter, like these dudes are dominating. Carter, obviously, from the inside. It's just so suffocating when they can get after the passer like that. And also when they're living in the backfield and defending the run as well as they were in this game. And then offensively, it's just so easy. It is, we are going to bully you in the trenches for 60 minutes. We are going to possess the ball for a significant majority of the game. And we are going to grind you down on the ground. And now we have Saquon Barkley in that role, the best running back in football, who's having a historically great season. And that puts Jalen Hurts in a position where he is playing extremely efficient football again. He is not turning the football over again. You are getting something much closer to 2022 Jalen Hurts than last year's Hurts, or the Hurts that you were seeing at the start of this year. So everything is humming, and it is a formula that is so overwhelming when things are going right, because if they establish their game script, then what are you going to do, right? You are just in a vice grip. It literally is, Chris Collinsworth said it on the broadcast, like you are watching a submission, like you are watching in a UFC fight, somebody on the mat who is just way stronger than their opponent is just draining their energy and is just controlling them on the ground for 4 minutes of the 5-minute round. Like that's what the Eagles did tonight. And they did that to a very solid football team, but a football team that has some limitations in the trenches, particularly on that offensive line. I thought that they just got absolutely destroyed. LA did. But this team is absolutely playing up to their potential right now. And it's been so impressive to watch. I do think that they're right there with the Lions. I have a little bit more faith in the Lions because of the coaching, because I think that their formula also is incredibly straightforward and replicable. And that defense is really playing at an incredibly high level as well. But if you had the Eagles number one, I couldn't complain. And I do think a huge reason for that is Saquon. The defense is the biggest reason, because this offense was still really good last year. But Saquon is on pace, Logan, to set the single season rushing yards record. He's on pace for 2,150 yards. He's on pace for 2,548 yards from scrimmage. That would be the all-time record. Yes, he has a 17th game, but nevertheless, if you are talking about setting the all-time record in the two major running back yardage categories, while he is doing it, averaging 6.2 yards per attempt, which is third all-time among running backs with 200-plus attempts, it's all-time efficiency. He is doing it both as a rusher and as a passer. He is breaking off more explosive runs than anybody else in football. Like, they just added the best running back in football, and they did so at premium value for the team, at incredibly team-friendly value. And it's just been such an impressive turnaround, because last year was a really disappointing slide from a team that I felt still was immensely talented, and they're pulling it all together right now.
Yeah, and I mean, Saquon's empowered more than ever to be able to do that, because this is by far the best offensive line he's ever been behind,
my
right?
God.
The Giants couldn't have dreamed of putting this line in front of him, and it's historic stuff. You mentioned the pass rush, too. I mean, they're just disruptive to Stafford all night, and we went on the Pick Aside podcast earlier this week, and we did a preview for the Week 12 slate, and I mentioned it there. I don't like picking against Matthew Stafford, because I think he's one of the 10 best quarterbacks in football. But
easily,
the thing about Stafford is, because he's older and because he's never been a super mobile guy, a lot of his throws, and a lot of this offense is predicated on timing and rhythm and anticipation. And for an older quarterback who can't get really mobile and create out of structure like that, when your pass rush can get home that quickly, it's just all the more disruptive. And in a lot of ways, they just neutralized the Rams offense. And that's the biggest thing to me, is like Saquon gives them that explosive punch. He puts them over the top, but the defense is what gives them the consistent baseline. And the trenches is the edge of what gives me the most faith about this Eagles team. And I think with the injury to Aiden Hutchinson, I think I would hear an argument out that on defense and offense, both sides of the football, that the Eagles are the best in the NFL. Like, I still think the Lions have the best offensive line in the NFL, but I think it's arguable that the Eagles have the best defensive line in the NFL. And they're just really balanced on both sides of the ball. I think the Eagles and the Lions are the two best trench teams in football. And I thought the gap between the Lions and everybody else was really, really big. It's not. I think the Eagles are really, really close. And that's what scares me the most about Philadelphia. The scariest football teams, I've always held this and shout out to Kansas City too, but they have a few weak points, right? They don't have the Eagles and Lions don't have any holes. The Chiefs have a few spots that aren't as solid. The scariest teams in the NFL every year are the teams that can consistently win in the trenches, and those are the edges that the Lions and the Eagles have over almost every team in the National Football League. And Philly's hitting their stride. This is the right time to be figuring it all out and putting it all together. I would still take Detroit, but it's close, man. It seems like it'd be like a flip of a coin for me. I don't really think there's not a big gap between them and Detroit to me.
This is a team without a weakness, as you said, because it's not just that they're dominant in the trenches, right? We know that they have elite skill position talent offensively. They don't even have Devontae Smith in this game, but they have one of the best receiver tandems in football.
Dude, their linebacking core is way better from last year.
100%.
They've just gotten so much better and they were already so talented last year.
Yeah, you mentioned, the defensive improvement with the linebackers. The secondary is one of the most improved units in football. The only reason that they aren't like the overwhelming Super Bowl favorite is honestly the same thing with the Lions. It's just there are certain teams that have those superhuman quarterbacks where the Chiefs roster, the Bills roster, these are not football teams that are as talented as the Eagles or the Lions. But I do have a hell of a lot more faith in those guys than I do in a Goff or Hurts. And I know that some people might view Hurts as a top 10 sort of guy. The production is certainly there over the last 7 weeks. I still think, though, we saw last year and we saw early this year some of the limitations when you are off the ideal game script and there is more pressure put onto him. And I do think that that's something that really matters. And listen, the first time he went to the Super Bowl, he was absolutely outstanding. But I do think that was the best football that Jalen Hurts was ever playing. And that was really the best game that he's ever played. So I don't know that you can expect him consistently to rise to that level. But shout out to the upgrades in talent defensively, Saquon offensively, and shout out to the coordinators, dude. I'm not a Sirianni guy. He is a coordinator merchant, but he has had some unbelievable coordinators. Bringing in Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio now, obviously the Super Bowl year, he had Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon, who both went straight to head coaching jobs. But I think that those were really good hires to take care of the respective sides of the ball here. Eagles look terrifying, and I really don't think there's a reason to view any of their flaws, and really the only one would be Sirianni. The other big question marks, Hurts' regression, the defensive regression from last year, I think that they've answered as well as you could have hoped for. That's not a big enough thing, my questions with Sirianni, to keep them out of these top-tier conversations. On the flip side of this for the Rams, Logan, obviously not how they hoped this one would go. What do you have to take away for them?
This is a good win for Philadelphia. They beat a good football team. I still think the Rams are an above-average team. And in a lot of ways, I think this has been an encouraging year for Los Angeles, right? I had really high expectations for them coming into the year. I picked the Rams to go to the NFC title game. They weren't going to win the NFC West, and the two teams I did have coming out of the NFC West might not even make the playoffs. It could be the inverse. I picked the Rams and Niners. We could end up with Cardinals and Seahawks, but I had high expectations for them. But this was a young, rebuilding roster. We knew about it last year. They had the most rookies and young guys on their team more than anybody else. And this year, you're hoping to see development. I just don't think the timeline's right, Carson. I just don't think this team's ready to contend again with Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford, I think, you put the team around him, he could go on a run. I still have immense faith in him. And the wide receiver talent is great. Nakua and Kupp are amazing, but also what he's been doing this year with Robinson, right? He's unlocked him. He's produced with Tutu Atwell. He produced with Jordan Whittington, when he was out there getting big minutes. So Stafford can produce with anybody, but the rest of this team is just too young and a little bit too far away. I think you see it today with how the offensive line got beat. And this isn't a bad offensive line. I think this is a decent offensive line, but they got bullied and moved around today by Philadelphia. And then defensively, kind of the same thing. I just think the Rams are really far away from being like a real deal contender right now. They're a competitive football team, and Matt Stafford makes all the world of difference. But the reason I say it's encouraging is I like what we've seen from Braden Fisk up front. I like what we've seen from Jared Verse, right? You're at least getting production out of your two rookies. And I don't know. I think it's all expectation based, man. I was hoping for a playoff run and stuff like that. I just think the Rams are maybe a year or two away from gearing up and being ready to go. And, it really making a real playoff push again. And I just don't know what version of Matthew Stafford we're going to have when that time comes around. So you're hoping for more, but to me, this is just a good team getting beat by a great team. I don't have a ton of takeaways for the Rams after this one.
I don't disagree. I also think that they are particularly vulnerable to a beatdown like this because their offensive line, it's very mediocre. And I thought that Brandon Graham was amazing in this game, but it's not like he's been that force all year, right? Like the Eagles' pressure rate this year is not very high. And by the way, also we're seeing in the chat, he left this game late with an injury, but it turns out that he's done for the year now. So that does matter because the edge position isn't as strong this year for Philly as it has been in some previous seasons. So torn triceps, that's really rough. That does matter for Philadelphia. 36-year-old Brandon Graham out there, man, still doing work. That really does bum me out. The Rams, though, like I said, it just feels like they are asking Matt Stafford to backpack them basically every game, right? And we knew that that was going to be the case. That's why I wasn't that high on this team before the year. The defense is below average. Verse is a dog. He's strongly in the defensive rookie of the year conversation. He bull rushed Jordan Mailata. Maybe he had the bull rush of the year in this game. Just absolutely flattened him. That was insane. And Fisk has been good too. So that's where they have upgraded defensively, but it's still a pretty weak group overall, below average at least. And they really haven't been able to run the ball recently. And I like Kyren Williams outside of the fact that he fumbles too much. I do like him, but they're 30th in yards per attempt on the ground. And that problem has just gotten worse and worse for them in recent weeks. And I thought that was an area where they struggled again in this one with just really one exception of a big run that he ripped off. So the Rams are solid, but they're not a team that's going to make the playoffs. I think that their schedule from here on out, you got to face the Bills. You go to San Francisco. I like the Niners more if they're healthy. To the Jets. But then you got Cardinals, Seahawks. Those games are kind of toss-ups, and they've dug themselves a bit of a hole here at 5-6, but they are solid. Before we move on from this game, I do want to just directly ask this. First of all, Saquon Barkley, Offensive Player of the Year now?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, we discussed this last week, actually, and we agreed that he had surpassed Derrick Henry. I thought that was very close at the midseason point.
I know this might
unbelievable sense.
I know this might seem counterintuitive to some people, but the argument that I was making a couple weeks back about how Josh was my MVP because he had the Offensive Player of the Year, I also think works against Derrick Henry in his Offensive Player of the Year case. But also, more importantly, Saquon's just putting up historic numbers. He just, he has the award right now.
Yeah, I think what's tough with Henry is yes, he plays with the greatest rushing quarterback that we've ever seen. And so obviously that is a very mutually beneficial situation. Also, though, Saquon is playing behind a top 2 offensive line in football, a top 5 offensive unit overall in football. So he is in a great situation.
The one thing that I'll add as a caveat to that, the Ravens need to get their head out of their ass, Carson. After watching the Lamar Jackson tape from last week and diving into it, I still don't feel like they utilize Derrick Henry enough. And I know you can look at the numbers and say that, right, he had 13 carries, but it's dude, it's how we always talk about Dame and Giannis, how I would be spamming pick and roll every possession. I'd be spamming play action with Derrick Henry and Lamar on a RPO every single play, man. I just think that's how they get their best offense. And what I'm getting at here is I just still don't think Baltimore is weaponizing Derrick Henry to the extent that I would be, man. I would be using that two-man combo every single play.
Yeah, he's gotten a lot of touches, but I agree. I think last week they definitely could have gone to him more. They should have run the ball more in
It's just
general.
it's not a lot of games, but it's like the second or third game this year where I
Yeah,
felt like that.
I agree. I mean, we talk about that. When they go away from their ideal game script, if they run the ball 20 times or fewer, that's not a good formula for them. The second question, offensive player of the year, I think we both agree is Saquon. Who is just the better running back? Who's the best running back in football right now? Is it one of those two, or is it CMC?
I mean, I still do like CMC, and especially the value that he brings in the receiving game. That's a great question, man. I think those are the top three guys.
Oh, definitely. Tier of their own. I can give my answer first if you want a little time to think.
I'm always partial to Derrick Henry, but considering the age factor and just considering that I know that he's got the best line that he's running behind at any of these guys, I probably would take Saquon just with the explosive element of his runs, the fact that he's breaking off bigger runs than anybody else, but also that he does bring that value in the receiving game. It's kind of funny, right? Like McCaffrey's more the receiving back, Henry's more the mauler, and Saquon's right in the middle of everybody. He can do a little bit of everything. I'd probably take Saquon right now, man, just with athletic ability, knowing that he's going to be able to run behind the best line. But yeah, I do think all three of these guys are at the top of the league.
It's really close. I mean, CMC last year was the guy. He hasn't been playing at that insane level since coming back from injury these last few weeks. I do think it's Saquon. I think it's really, really close. I mean, Derrick Henry is the single hardest running back to tackle that I've seen in my lifetime, maybe in NFL history. And like in terms of yards after contact is still blowing everybody else out of the water. And like short yardage is the single running back that I want the most. And Saquon is playing behind this amazing offensive line, and he leads the league in yards before contact. And we've seen inferior running backs still produce really good numbers in this offense. Nothing close to Saquon, where we are talking about record-breaking in terms of yardage and yards from scrimmage and damn near record-breaking efficiency. But I do think it's the explosiveness and the receiving game combo. I mean, he's such a superior receiving threat to Henry. It's very close between the two of them. Clearly, both of them were in horrible situations last year and were just wildly underestimated. I remember talking before the year about offensive player of the year picks, and like we threw out both their names, but they were almost like dark horses. It was like, well, I think Saquon and Derrick Henry are going to have much better years in this situation, but coming from the place they were in, obviously they weren't close to those conversations last year. I'm going to go Saquon, though. I do think he's the best running back in football. He's having a legitimately historic season right now. Derrick Henry is also having a pretty historic season, but I prefer Saquon's yardage, production, versatility, explosiveness to the fact that Derrick Henry is just like the short yardage touchdown GOAT. Logan, let's talk about the San Francisco 49ers. Let's talk about Christian McCaffrey, because they had CMC out there today, but they didn't have a lot of other guys. They didn't have Nick Bosa. They didn't have Brock Purdy. And frankly, they got their asses handed to them. They are now sitting at 5-6, one game back within the division, where obviously the Rams are also tied with them at 5-6. Is their season over?
Yeah, I'd say effectively yes. And there's a few reasons. One, the injury component. There's a couple guys that are out that are just have, they have no chance of coming back. First is Brandon Ayuk out with a torn ACL. He had surgery. They're down Javon Hargrave for the rest of the year with the triceps. And then the rest of the injuries, I mean, these are all guys that could come back, but the fact that they're dealing with injuries scares me about their health the rest of the way, and that it's kind of up in the air. First is Nick Bosa. He's dealing with an oblique thing, where they were also down Trent Williams in this game with an ankle injury. They were down Brock Purdy with a shoulder injury. Charvarius Ward is unfortunately dealing with the death of his daughter. I hope he gets back and is in a good space mentally. Drake Greenlaw has been out with an Achilles injury. He's supposed to be returning soon. And then also Hufanga in the secondary. He's been dealing with a wrist injury. And Kyle Shanahan says it's not a sure thing that he's going to return this year. So they're missing key guys that aren't coming back. They're missing a lot of guys right now that could come back, but may not be back at 100% and could deal with lingering injury issues the rest of the season. Worse than that is just the situation that they're currently in. As you mentioned, they're in the 10 seed right now. This week, they lose versus a wild card contender against Green Bay. This was a very important game if they won it in terms of if they win out or they go on a run here right at the end, and difference that it could make in seeding head-to-head against Green Bay, they've also lost games to everyone in their division. So they are behind Seattle, Arizona, and the Rams. You add in the component that they've lost effectively in heartbreaking fashion in all of those games, blown fourth-quarter leads. It makes them all the more painful. And so the injuries, the situation, the final component is you look at the remaining part of their schedule. Next week, they go at Buffalo.
Yep.
That's not an easy game. Then they take on Chicago at home. That's not an easy game. They take on the Rams at home. They go to Miami. Then they play Detroit at home. And then they travel to Arizona. That is 0 gimmies over the next 6 weeks. And
let's go through that. Let's go through that
Sure,
specifically.
sure.
Let's make our predictions. So they go at Bills. I think that's a clear loss. Okay, then they host the Bears. I think that's a win.
Oh, I'm going to say win just because of the Bears' incompetence, but
the
Bears are very talented.
You think the Bears are going to have a 38-yard field goal attempt to win it, and then they're going to snap the ball off of somebody's balls? And
yeah, maybe, man. I wouldn't put it past
I can see that happening. Okay, host the Rams.
I hope they win. I mean,
yeah, I give them a win there, but it's close to a toss-up at the Dolphins.
That's not a gimme. I mean,
not a gimme at all. I think that's a win.
I would take San Francisco.
I would take San Francisco too. Lions,
loss.
I think that's an easy L. At the Cardinals, what do you think?
I would take San Francisco, but that's not an easy win. And that's the point is San Francisco needs to win out, or they need to win 5 of 6 minimum. The mere fact that they're taking on Detroit and Buffalo, to me, kind of, sinks their boat. And more importantly, too, just when we're looking at the context of expectations from the beginning of this season and last season and the Kyle Shanahan era, the goal of this team is not to make the playoffs. It's to win a Super Bowl. That's the expectation. That's a standard. They've been to 4 NFC title games in 5 years. They've been to 2 Super Bowls in 5 years, mind you, with 2 different quarterbacks. I think when you put it all together, I would say the season's done. It's over. It's wraps.
Wow.
Like I would say in my crystal ball, miss the playoffs at 9-8, 8-9.
Yeah. So that is the one thing. I don't agree that they have to win out or even necessarily get 5 of 6.
Really?
It would definitely be good to get 5 of 6. Well, look at the division, bro. I mean, wild card's out of the picture. No NFC West team is making the wild card. They've all cannibalized each other, and they're all just thoroughly in this range of being mid, being very solid. I personally love the division. I'm fascinated by it, but nobody's going to win 11 games in this division. But it's hard for me to see them winning more than 4 out of 6. And you talk about the preseason expectations. If you looked at this slate preseason, you would have thought, okay, Lions and Bills, well, those are the teams that they're on like even footing with, right? Those are the teams where we're looking at those and going, okay, yeah, those are maybe toss-ups. And then the other teams, the Niners should be a significant favorite. And instead, they're in the spot where it's like, yeah, I really don't give them much of a chance in Buffalo. I really don't give them much of a chance against Detroit. And against these middling teams, it's like, I don't know, man. That could really go either way. It's the 5th toughest strength of schedule remaining. And as you mentioned, we don't know the severity of a lot of these injuries. We don't know if guys are going to be back, and they have to get back out there ASAP, right? You need Trent Williams immediately. You need Hufanga as soon as possible. You need Bosa back immediately. You need Brock Purdy back immediately. And if you don't get those guys, it's really hard to see a path. And if you do win 4 out of these 6, which is arguably a generous prediction, because at Arizona, that could really go either way, right? Several of these games are close to toss-ups, but I do like the Niners in 4 of these 6 games. I would pick them on paper. That gets you to 9-8, but then you have the worst record in the division right now. And if you win against the Rams, you win against the Cards, you're still 3-3. You've split with everybody. So tiebreakers are not looking good for you. And the Cardinals and the Seahawks, both very flawed teams. Neither of them are going to get to 11 wins, but they are both 6-5 right now, 1 game up on you with easier schedules remaining. So the Niners really, really would like to get 5 of these 6. And how does that happen? I don't see that happening. 4, which I think is more realistic, it puts them in a really tough spot. This was a game that you needed, and you just got absolutely destroyed. And obviously, you didn't have a lot of your best players on the field, so that's a big component of it. But it's brutal, man. I think I've been more optimistic about the Niners than most people, just because I've been like, look, obviously, they're not as good as we expected, and they've dug themselves a hole. they're still really talented and they can go toe-to-toe with these teams. And if they get healthy and if they start playing their best football, well, they haven't gotten healthy. They haven't started playing their best football. They lost some key games that were in their hands early in the year that have put them in this position. They are fighting a major, major uphill battle. And health is a big part of it, but it's not like we can compare this to the 2020 season, right? Where the wheels came off because everybody was hurt. Kittle was hurt. Jimmy G was hurt. Debo was hurt. Like all their best players were hurt that season. This year hasn't been like that. Right now is actually the hardest they've been hit by injuries. They lost Hargrave early. They haven't had Greenlaw all year. But outside of that, it's been like, well, CMC, obviously, that was a big absence, and he is back now. But it was a lot of guys missing games in spots. They've definitely had bad injury luck, but they've also shot themselves in the foot, and they've been in position to win some games that they didn't win. And some of that was fluky and weird, and a lot of it was on special teams, which is a weird way to lose multiple football games. But that's what's happened to them this year. So I couldn't say that the season is 100% over. Maybe I have too much respect in the Niners as a football team and in their talent, and also just maybe viewing this as a vulnerable division, still a division that is still there for the taking, and they're only a game back, but they're in a really, really bad spot. Absolutely.
I mean, I think that's the take is, they pissed their margin away. You can't lose those football games. You can't let Geno break out and win the game with 2 runs right at the end. You cannot let Matt Stafford throw an 80-yard bomb on your head top. Ronnie Bell cannot drop that pass. You know what I mean? There's just you can't lose those games. And unfortunately, the Niners did in disastrous fashion. They collapsed and they made their bed, and now they got to lay in it. I just think the margins are too large to make up at this point, and I have too much respect for Arizona, Seattle, to think that one of those teams isn't going to pull away with the division. If I had to take, I would probably take Seattle.
So you're saying this season is over. I'm saying this season they have just a tiny sliver of hope. I would say it's 95% over. Big picture, beyond this year, are you fundamentally concerned? Are you in the spot where they need to shake things up? Or do you think injuries was the big factor, some of these fluke losses? How worried are you going forward about this team?
Elaborate. What do you mean shake things
up? So
I'm
talking next year. Well, just in terms of personnel, right? Do you think that major changes needed here, or do you think that they are capable of playing much better football? Because of these circumstances,
no.
They lost out on the season.
I think the one thing that sucked over the past couple of years is losing multiple defensive coordinators. I think that's hurt them. Just trying to making that adjustment, and it's everybody that they've elevated to that spot has been within their system, so they obviously know the defensive scheme and the personnel and the play calls and stuff like that. But it's hard year after year bringing in a new guy just because of the little wrinkles. But no, talent-wise, I think the Niners are there. I still think the Niners are there. Now, What gets interesting is the Brock Purdy contract when he gets paid and how that changes the dynamics of everything. To me, I would not pay Brock Purdy $1 over $30 million a year. Personally, I think his market value to me as an outsider, I would say is in that $25 to $30 million range. And if I was Brock Purdy, I would be very, very happy if that was the money that I was walking away with in contract negotiations. That's my number for Brock Purdy. His statistics and the market value of an average quarterback right now would likely suggest that Brock Purdy, considering his stats and his record, would indicate that he probably deserves $40 million. You cannot make that with all the talent that you have on this roster. And the only thing that concerns me about this team, I guess, moving forward is the Brock Purdy contract. And then just the consistent availability of these guys, just because all the stars continue to get hurt. Yeah. And you just sit there kind of wondering, is this going to continue, right? Is McCaffrey going to have another injury next year? And can he just not take this kind of workload at his age? Is Trent Williams going to continue dealing with injuries because he's getting up there in age, right? Talent-wise, I think they're fine. On the defense, you've got a defensive player of the year caliber guy in Nick Bosa. You've got another one in Fred Warner. You've got difference makers in the secondary and guys like Hufanga. Hargrave, healthy is a big-time difference maker. So if the Niners are healthy and the cap situation isn't hell post-Purdy contract, I would still think the Niners are probably my favorite for this division next season, and they're probably a top 10 team again. I'll buy right into it. I believe in Kyle Shanahan. I believe in the identity of this team. I think they're really well coached. I think he's a really good head coach. And I think they're one of the most talented teams in football. But they lost some really crucial games early on. They've gotten beat by the injury bug. And I'm probably out on this year. Are you more concerned about the next coming up years, or what's your biggest red flag about them moving forward?
No, I really think that this year was combination of bad luck and a combination of weird losses. And that's on them. And also just they do have flaws that I didn't fully anticipate. This defense has not been as good as I expected it to be. And they slowed down a bit in the home stretch of last year defensively. And they've had a couple of key injuries, but it just has been a thoroughly mediocre defense this entire season. And you mentioned like every few years with this core, I don't know. Maybe you are just due for a lot of these guys getting hurt, because that has been a thing with Debo. Ayuk, it hasn't been, but up to this point, but now he deals with it. Kittle has been good to miss a few games per year, and that's unfortunate, but maybe that is a reality. But I still look at them going into next year with their talent on paper as one of the top teams in the NFC. And I think if they can play up to their potential defensively, we know what this offense is. Regardless of what you think of Brock, he doesn't have to be great for this offense to be great. He has to execute. He has to do his job, but they are just overwhelmingly talented at the skill positions. And I think that Shanahan is a great offensive mind. I understand people have some situational issues, but at the end of the day, he is going to make the most out of his talent, and he is going to put forth elite offenses when the dudes are out there on the field. So I'm with you on the Purdy contract. He is not somebody I would pay like an elite quarterback. That's a conversation that'll come up after next season, right? That's when they'll have to make that decision next year. I think this core is a good enough core for you to be a contender if you're healthy and if you clean up on some of the execution stuff, some of the special team stuff that ultimately cost you this season. I wouldn't be like sky is falling long term. The Niners have kept their window open as long as anybody outside of Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, these past few years. Like those have been the consistent elite football teams. And I think that they can be that again next year.
Last thing I'll add, the only thing that I think concerns me about the Niners outside of what we've discussed is other teams getting a lot better. I just think the NFC is really, really improved, right? Like there's just not many the NFC South is a freaking joke top to bottom, but like,
yeah,
the NFC North is cutthroat. All four teams, right, are going to be battling for the division and 4 wild card spots next season. The NFC East, right, the Commanders have taken a step up. I think the Cowboys, they're a joke this year. I don't expect them to be nearly as bad next season. The Eagles are real contenders. Like, and the NFC West is cutthroat. That's the only thing that I'd say, too, along with what we've discussed, is just the NFC's gotten a lot better. They may not have, because we always talked last year, and we talked this year, too. Oh, they don't have the quarterbacks. They don't have the quarterbacks. And sure, that may make the difference in one game, but well, first of all, they have added some real deal quarterbacks this year in the form of like Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. But and I think Baker's taken a step up. Guys like Kirk on the margins. But
Jordan Love ascending last year and being a dude.
I love Jordan Love, man. I
know
love Jordan
Love.
But the NFC's gotten a lot better, and that would be the last thing I'd say. Is it's like there's not going to be cupcake easy games for the Niners anytime, but I think they're going to bounce back next year, and I would be shocked if 2 years in a row a Kyle Shanahan team missed the playoffs. I would be stunned.
I agree. So you think that the Niners are done, and you think that the Seahawks are the favorite to win the division?
I would take Seattle.
And so obviously they played Arizona today. Those are kind of the two front runners. Just real quick, anything that stood out to sort of solidify that opinion?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it was the defense today. This has been an offense that has been rolling. They hold Arizona to 6 points. This is an offense that was number 7 in points per drive coming into this game. They hold this rushing attack that was number 2 in yards per carry coming into this game to 49 yards on 14 carries, 3.5 per carry. They were the number 7 third down defense in football. They hold them to 3rd and 12 on that end. And they're the number 7 red zone offense in football. They hold them out of the end zone on both red zone trips. Like, Seattle buttoned it up. And that's why I thought that Seattle was susceptible. I thought that Arizona was really going to be able to establish the ground game, play off of that. And Kyler did his thing through the air. Him and Trey McBride had a really big game, but they couldn't generate any points. And ultimately, this game swung with the Kyler Murray pick 6, which was crazy. I don't know if you saw that sequence, man. Mike McDonald looks really foolish because it's a 4th and 1, and he burns a timeout as I think Arizona either got stuffed behind the line of scrimmage or they threw an incomplete pass. And so it was going to be a turnover on downs, and everybody's like, oh, damn it. Like, Seattle just screwed the pooch. Now Arizona's getting a second chance. You look back up, and Devin Witherspoon gets back to Kyler Murray, forces him to throw a ball, is way over the head of his target, right into the hands of a Seattle defender, returns it for a pick 6. I mean, that's what swings this game individually. And don't get me wrong, this is not a brand new defense in 1 week, and 1 week is not going to change wholeheartedly how I feel about a defense, but they're still talented. I like Mike McDonald as a mind, but this offense is they can put up points, and I know they only put up 16 in this game, but Geno is freaking electric, and they got playmakers on the outside. All of these teams in the NFC West are inherently flawed.
Yeah.
Seattle is with their offensive line and their defensive inconsistencies, but they've got playmakers offensively, and I love watching Geno sling that rock, man. So
Amen, dude.
I'm gonna take Seattle, man. Maybe it's just because they fire me up, but I like the way Seattle's been playing, and I think they've got more offensive playmakers than anybody else in this division, and I think that's going to be the difference.
This is so hard between these two teams, dude. I swear to God. I feel like I've gone back and forth multiple times. The thing with Seattle, the advantage that they potentially have is the ceiling with their defense. It's not a ceiling that they've consistently reached, but with the talent they have in their secondary, I mean, Leonard Williams just absolutely destroyed this game when he's playing his best. They're on another level from Arizona, who is just a bad defense, and they've improved a bit as the year has gone along, but I still think they're a bad defense at the end of the day. But then Arizona's offensively more balanced. They struggle to run the ball in this one, but overall, I mean, they're a great rushing attack, whereas the Seahawks, we always talk about, it's just like Geno save us. And that's a really tough formula for them to replicate. Arizona has a slightly easier schedule, but Arizona, as good as they are offensively, they're also inconsistent offensively. And this was one of those games where they're inconsistent, and they were able to move the ball some, but of him, I think he's been a top 10 quarterback this year. He's laid some eggs this year. They've been playing really good football as of late. I mean, they'd won 4 straight coming into this one. I think I'm going to go Arizona because I trust that offensive formula more, and because I think they can just get a couple easy wins, right? They play the Pats, they play the Panthers. They still got to win a couple tough games, but I'm going to slightly lean them. It is crazy, crazy close between those two teams, though. I mentioned the Panthers, Logan. They damn near beat the Kansas City Chiefs today. Well, they were trailing the entire game, but they tied it up with a couple minutes left at 27, and then they lost. But Bryce Young was out there slinging it, man. Were you moved by this performance from Bryce?
Moved is an interesting way to put it, because I've always been kind of in the middle on Bryce. And what I mean by that is I've never really believed in the superstar ceiling, even when the Panthers drafted him. I thought he was going to be a good baseline quarterback immediately who could limit mistakes and do simple stuff. He just, never had the big arm. He lacked explosiveness and burst. But I've never been fully out on Bryce either. I've never been like, oh my God, this guy's the worst freaking quarterback I've ever seen. But today might have been the best game I've ever seen Bryce Young play. First, really accurate. You see on some deep throws downfield, a couple to Xavier Legette and Jatavian Sanders. He hits on some big ones. And I know people always use these cliche words, but it's true. He looked way more confident and comfortable in the pocket. The anticipation was there. The timing was there. The rhythm was there. And that was the most encouraging thing about this game, along with one other thing. Because Bryce doesn't have that raw ability of like an Anthony Richardson, right? Because you can see it with a guy like Anthony Richardson. Even though he's not the most consistent, he'll give you those flashy plays. Bryce has to put together an entire game of consistently being on time and on target, because he's not going to have those outlier big-time, 30-yard scrambles or 80-yard shot plays downfield. The way he's going to win you football games is methodical drives, and he did that today. And the bigger thing is he executed in big spots. The end of the first half, he drives the Panthers down the field to get a field goal to turn a 26 game to a 20-9 game. First drive of the second half, he marches them down there to get a touchdown. That goes from a 20-9 game to a 20-16 game, and down the stretch, he converted some big third downs and some one big fourth down to Adam Thielen, and he limited negative plays. You can't ask for a quarterback like Bryce to do anything else for you. Like, I don't expect the top tier playmaking. I don't think Bryce is a guy that's capable of doing that. That's why I've never been super high on him. But if he can play controlled, methodical, confident football, and he did today, that's not an easy task against one of the best defenses in the NFL. A smaller quarterback, he stood in the pocket, he fired and delivered, he made great decisions, and he was on time and on target. And there's a few plays that I want you to look at when I talk about the superstar ceiling. The biggest ones are where Bryce has to get out of the pocket and create for himself. Watch Drake May, watch Caleb Williams, watch Anthony Richardson. Anytime a pass rusher is about to get home on them, even Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix has a different level of agility and explosiveness when needing to get out of the pocket that Bryce doesn't have. That doesn't mean that Bryce can't be a good quarterback. It just means he's not going to have that kind of play extension out of the pocket, and he's not going to have that kind of scrambling ability. I think all of those guys have self-creation edges over Bryce, but I still think Bryce can be a really damn good pocket passer and above average pocket passer that can win you games. And the guy I have gone to, I think this is the apex. This is the pinnacle that Bryce could reach as a passer, but it's like a right-handed Tua Tagovailoa, where he's not going to be able to go above and beyond for you, but he's going to be able to win you games. He's going to be able to put up big statistical performances, and it's going to have to be in a situation that maximizes his abilities. But I really liked what I saw from him today, and if he can continue building on this performance, I think he can be a good starting quarterback in the National Football League.
Wow.
I just, to people who maybe think that he could, I don't think Bryce could ever be top 10. I don't know if Bryce could be top half of the league.
So do you think he could be the Panthers franchise quarterback? Do you think there is still a path for him to be a guy that they give a second contract to?
Like Andy Dalton, like I said, on that Tua, Andy Dalton kind of scale where, like, again, he's not going to carry you to wins, but he can a high-level game manager. And I mean that in the most respectful way possible to Bryce, but I just think there are qualities and physical traits that he does not possess that limit him from becoming a superstar quarterback. Like, here, I'm going to let you, I want to hear your thoughts about what you thought about Bryce in this game, but I'd love to do a little quarterback. Who would you rather, Bryce?
Sure. Oh, you want me to throw some out there? I thought you were going to bring it.
I was going to let you go on Bryce, but if you want to do that now, we can. Would you rather
go for it.
Would you rather have Bo or Bryce? I know that one's probably tough for you.
We're pulling up to the mid-off, dude. I saw somebody in the chat saying that Bo is the next Tom Brady. This is why you MFs need to chill, bro. You're going to turn me into an anti-Bo Nix villain. I don't want to be that, but if you push me, I will become that. Bo is the guy that I would rather have. I think both of them have their limitations athletically that prevent them from having super high ceilings, in my opinion. But Bo at least has the frame. He's bigger. Their arms, neither are great. I would take Bo. I mean, part of it literally just being size. I think that is going to remain the biggest issue for Bryce, or a major issue.
I kind of like Bo across the board. I like his legs more. I like his arm more. And
he's definitely better at using his legs. He's not faster than Bryce, but Bryce doesn't use his legs. So I'll agree with that as well. He definitely makes more happen outside the pocket.
And I'm telling you, Bryce doesn't have burst. Bryce doesn't have that first step. There's something with Bo. Bryce doesn't have that. He's never had that pop.
He just doesn't even try to escape.
Even that's what I'm getting at is when he does step up in the pocket and try to scramble, it's not a burst. It's I need to get 3 steps before I'm going to hit it, where Bo can get that, it's marginal because Bo's not a phenomenal athlete either. Okay.
I would take Bo.
Would you rather have Bryce or Will Levis? Wow. Is that a thought for you?
I would take Bryce. I mean, dude, listen, I don't want to overreact to this Bryce game. I thought it was really fun. I thought it was lovely because there were people saying this
I'm just out
on worse pick than Jamarcus Russell. I'm out on Will Levis too, but Will Levis has physical tools we've discussed many times. The bozo gene outweighs it.
Yeah.
But like you see, there are certain throws that he can make, right? I mean, he made a throw to Calvin Ridley in this game, like 3rd and 11, pass rush bearing down, 50 yards, perfect ball. So if you can do that compared to Bryce at 5'10" with his arm, I may think about it for a second, But I think that Bryce is more accurate. I think he's got a much better head on his shoulder. He's a better processor. I would take Bryce. Neither of them are close to franchise quarterbacks. Bo also isn't a franchise quarterback to me. He's a fine starter.
I remember that on tape. I think he'll start for a minute in Denver because I think franchise quarterback gets thrown around a lot. I don't know if he's like a franchise, like the building block, but
That's what I'm
I
considering.
think he's going to win.
Quarterback.
I think he's going to win games for a while in Denver. I believe in Bo. And the reason I don't think Will Levis is ever going to figure it out. I have watched.
I agree.
I'm at this point in the Will Levis experience. Like that interception today, I laughed my ass off. I thought it was the funniest shit ever. It's just the Will. That's what I think about Will. All right, Anthony Richardson or Bryce Young.
Anthony Richardson.
They are by a mile.
Close.
I agree.
I agree. Close.
That one's not close. Is there any rookie in this class that you wouldn't take over Bo? Because I think Caleb's a no-brainer. I think Jaden's a no-brainer.
Over Bryce?
I said Bo instead of Bryce. Yeah. I would take Bo. I would take everybody that we've seen game tape on, I think.
Oh, I mean, well, the big three to me are in completely different tiers. I mean, those are dudes who do have superstar ceilings. We haven't seen Penix. We haven't seen JJ, so I don't really have a strong opinion on either one.
I would take Penix over Bryce, but okay. Who else is in that range?
I think you've thrown out a nice array of dudes, man. I think the Would You Rather was a smashing success. We got to talk about Will Levis. I think that he's the first blind quarterback in NFL history, and I'd like to congratulate him on that because the amount of guys that he just does not see defensively, it's incredible.
God bless Brian Callahan. If Will Levis was my quarterback, man, I'm breaking clipboards. I'm breaking headsets.
Yeah. Take away his mayo for a week.
Yeah, that'll show him. That'll freaking show him, man.
It will.
Just like situationally, that moment right there. Because I went, holy shit, that interception from CJ just swung this game on its head. If the Titans march down here and get a field goal, this game can almost effectively be over. Like, that just is such a big swing. And before I could even get the thought out of my brain, Will Levis had given the ball right back to them.
But then he got the win, though, which I think says a lot about the Texans, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Bryce played an awesome game. I thought that he was composed. I thought that he was under control. I thought that he wasn't sped up, panicked. A lot of the stuff that we saw him struggle with early in the year, he was accurate. He was kind of shockingly inaccurate early in the year before he was benched. Then he also made a couple big-time throws. And as you mentioned, situationally, leads a clutch drive at the end. I mean, there's the one throw on 3rd and 8 where he's bracing for a hit, but he gets to the top of his drop very quickly, and he throws a really nice ball, right? It was something that we did not see from Bryce in the first few starts of the season at all. But do I think he's just turning into a franchise quarterback right in front of our eyes? I don't. I still think that he has some of the most physically limiting tools of any starting quarterback that's even being considered in the NFL. I mean, forget a number 1 overall pick and all this stuff that we said about this being like a teachable moment for the NFL of don't draft an athlete this limited in a league where big freak athletes are dictating the sport. None of that has changed because he played a really good game today. And he's looked better over the last few weeks, but like this was really the strongest performance of his season by far. I do think we're seeing the mental side of things come around to where he can be a guy who I can see being like a journeyman, low end, maybe even mediocre starter. But I just think he's too limited physically. And that's unfortunately something that he just can't change, is never going to be able to change. On the flip side of this, Logan, are you worried at all about Kansas City that this did end up being such a close game? Because I know we discussed this on Pick a Side. It's obviously become the Chiefs' gimmick that every single game is close, and then they eke out 90% of them. I kind of thought this would be their first dominant win of the year, though, just because they lost last week, and it is the Carolina Panthers, and Bryce did his thing. But nevertheless, this is a team that has won actually 2 games in a row coming into this one against really bad teams and is getting outscored by like 15 points per game on the year. So was this concerning for Kansas City to you?
Not for me. I mean, I was impressed with Carolina. I thought they held up against the Chiefs pass rush really well. I thought they did a pretty good job up front in general. The one area I was disappointed in was the coverage, but honestly, I thought a lot of the busted plays that where Bryce found guys, it was because the Chiefs brought the blitz, and Bryce was just able to beat the blitz and get the ball out before they could get pressure home on him, where he found the one guy that was open. So It's not the most convincing win, and I would have picked this to be a close game if they had won last week, but I thought this was going to be a classic. Contender gets beat down, they come out and just make mincemeat of their opponent this week. It's not the most impressive win, but I said it with 1:46 on the clock, as did I'm sure every NFL fan around the world said was too much time. And that's where I thought Carolina could have won this game is when – and that's the last component that I wanted to bring up. I'm glad we got on this. Kansas City gifted them points at the end of this football game. I mean, the defensive pass interference gifts them a 1st and goal.
Yeah.
And then you get another defensive pass interference on the 2-point conversion. You also have another unnecessary roughness penalty in this game that basically gifts Carolina a field goal. So the Chiefs did the Carolina offense a lot of favors in this game, which I think is important to mention. And I thought Carolina really messed up with their clock management if they wanted to win this game. I just thought they should have felt that out more, where you got to know, like, hell, man, I'd rather kneel the ball on or, hand it off on a toss or something on 1st and 2nd. And I get you need to get in the end zone regardless. But 1:46, you just knew. Mahomes is going to get down here. They're going to kick a field goal. They're going to win this game. It never really felt like it was in, the Panthers were ever really going to win this game.
No, I agree completely. Nevertheless, I do think this is kind of a concerning performance for Kansas City. This defensive performance specifically concerns me some, just because this has been the most consistent defense in football over the last 2 years. They are incredible against the run. Their pass rush is excellent. They're top 5 in pressure rate this year. But the difference between last year and this year, something that maybe I haven't fully given the necessary attention, is that the secondary hasn't been the same, and their overall pass defense has been pretty average because of that regression in the secondary. And I thought you saw that in this game, right? I want to give credit to Bryce for playing well. Also, this is a dude who's averaging 153 yards per start coming into this one, and he kind of shreds you, 263 yards. You're getting beat on some explosive plays by an offense that's really struggled all year, and you are committing some defensive pass interference penalties. That's the only thing, because the formula that I've always banked on with Kansas City over these last 2 years is defense that is as good as any in football and quarterback that is as good as any in football, right? If not the best in their respective categories. And I think that the defense just might be a little more of a question mark this year than it was last year. So obviously they win this one. They're amazing in close games. I was just hoping that we could see one really decisive victory from the Chiefs, because we haven't seen it all year. And the other concern on top of the defense, you let up 5 sacks to the worst pass rush in football. The Panthers are last in pressure rate. They had 12 sacks coming into this game. I think that specifically Morris sucks on that O-line. And I just think that this team is vulnerable. Turnstile, bro. I think that they're vulnerable. I think that they are great, but vulnerable. And right now, I don't think that there is any gap between them and Buffalo, because I like Buffalo's offense more than theirs. And the respective defenses are trending in a positive direction for Buffalo, where I think that group is continuing to look better. And with Kansas City, I still think it's a really, really good defense, but I don't think it's the best defense in the league like I would have given them credit for. Even last week, I was talking about them being the best defense in the league against Buffalo, and I feel like I've become a little more aware of the flaw in the secondary, and this week was definitely part of that.
Carson, you and members of the chat, I offer you to join me in a quick prayer real quick.
Okay.
Dear Lord, baby Jesus, please don't let the Chiefs come out of the AFC this year. Please let it be the Buffalo Bills and beautiful Josh Allen, and let the Bills win the Super Bowl, please. That would be awesome. Like a Bills-Lions or Bills-Eagles Super Bowl, I think would be fantastic. And if you could make that happen, we here at Nerd Sesh would be greatly appreciative. Amen.
Very generous of you, Logan. But we don't need divine help. If the Bills are the better team, they'll go out there, they'll make it happen. And I think that there's a very, very, very real chance. Are
you going to try to make it out to another playoff game if they go deep again this year?
I don't know, man. Last year that resulted in Tyler Bass.
I know that's like as bad as it.
No, so
that's as bad as it gets, man.
Yeah, that was quite the ordeal. I don't know.
Was that the accident as well, or was that another year?
No. That was another year. I got into a car accident in the snow. I wasn't driving.
Crazy.
Yeah. But we had an incredible 4-hour drive afterwards because we were staying
That's
very
gotta
far
be
away from
crushing,
Buffalo. It
man.
was great. No, it was the best. It was actually the best. But I think if those two teams are on equal footing, and something in my gut says, well, maybe the Bills are the better team, but also let's chill. It's the Kansas City Chiefs, and we'll see what happens in the remainder of the regular season and if they match up again. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and we've got plenty more to discuss on the other side after some quick words from DraftKings. The Emirates NBA Cup is here. You can win big getting in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All 30 teams split into 6 groups every Tuesday and Friday, playing for the right to advance in the single elimination in-season tourney, culminating in the NBA Cup Championship in Vegas. First time, here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins.
Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Let's talk about Mini Mahomes, Logan. I'm not throwing out that comp, but Caleb Williams lost. Of course, he plays for the Chicago Bears, so they lost the game, but he was pretty phenomenal against the Minnesota Vikings and erased an 11-point deficit in under 2 minutes before losing in overtime. What did you make of this performance from Caleb?
I mean, dude, like to paint the picture, I think
Paint it.
Lily and Mark probably thought something was wrong with me because every 5 seconds I was going, "Oh my God, Caleb! Oh my
Right.
God!"
So this is going to be a glazing infraction just immediately off rip. That's going to be 5 yards.
Oh, that's how he made me feel. That's how
No,
he
that's
made
real.
me
That's real. That's how I
feel.
feel when I watch Evan Mobley play basketball. So I understand.
Dude. I mean, he might have had play of the year today. I'm
Yeah.
dead serious. That when Van Ginkel comes off the edge on that one as a free rusher, he is completely unblocked. And Caleb
Comes off
has the
the edge.
wherewithal. He comes off the edge, man.
It's
Free.
actually breaking the rules, but fine.
Nobody touched him, and he came off the edge. And Caleb just exploded right past him to get outside the pocket. And it was like the most Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, wow.
Ooh la
You gave
la.
Mahomes comparison. I think he reminds me of Rodgers more than anybody else, just with his how he moves and how the ball comes out, in my opinion. But it wasn't just that one. He had multiple jaw-dropping throws throughout this game to Keenan Allen. He put it on full display. Like, it was everything. You see the live arm. He's throwing Andrew Luck kind of balls. I mean, javelins.
Yeah.
He is explosive getting out of the pocket. You see some of the scrambling ability today. And this is one of the most comfortable I've ever seen him play. And this is the best game I've ever seen him play. And most importantly, he was clutch at the end of this game.
Yep.
He marches Chicago down to get the touchdown and 2-point conversion to get close. And then after the Vikes goofed the after they goofed the onside kick, yeah, he throws a dot to DJ Moore to get inside field goal range to force OT. Now, overtime, I will say, was not a mixed bag. It was the inverse where he takes a big sack, and that was disappointing. But
big sack after like 10 full seconds, where it's like if somebody hasn't come open by then, you either got to leave that pocket or you got to throw the ball away.
100%. I completely agree. But, you know, we are entering late year one of Caleb Williams, and that is why I told people to hold reservations about rookies and rookie quarterbacks. This is normally when quarterbacks really start to figure it out, and you can really make your evaluations. I still think he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in football. I know earlier in the year, Carson, you said he was going to one day be the best quarterback in football, but this game specifically.
I didn't. I said he'd be top 3.
Okay.
Proceed.
Okay. Caleb Williams single-handedly gave the Bears a chance to win this football game. And I have never thought anybody would be able to save this sorry-ass franchise. But if anybody can, I think Caleb Williams can. I never left. I never left, man. We were always here, Carson. I was waiting on this game,
10 toes down, buddy.
Wow. I mean, it was everything you could ask from a quarterback. The easy stuff, the over-the-top stuff. Caleb put it all together today. This is the best game I thought of his young career.
He's had some good ones, but this one was really, really awesome. I thought that it was an unbelievable performance. And you mentioned the throw on the run on the right sideline to DeAndre Swift was an absolute freak kind of throw that like a handful of dudes not in the league today in NFL history can make, bro. That is such ridiculous raw arm talent. And the lasers throughout the day into tight windows was unbelievable. You mentioned the clutch factor too. Made some great plays on 3rd and 4th down, converted 8 total 3rd or 4th downs on the day. And that's also where he was excellent last week, right? Situationally. And again, like last week, used his legs very effectively. He has the unbelievable scramble on 4th down where he jumps over a defender and gets out into open space. And I just think Caleb is a clutch dude. And sometimes I think that this whole idea of being clutch can be a little bit amorphous and like we react to like 1 or 2 performances and it's like, all right, that's not really enough to say if a dude is clutch or not. So I don't want to overstate that, but it's just like when they have needed him in these big drives, even when it's been a rocky up and down offensive performance, he has shown you at least the mental toughness, the competitive fire to be ready for that moment. And he's played some of his best football in these gotta have it drives, right? He put them in position to win versus the Commanders, and then they allowed the Hail Mary. He put them in position to win versus Green Bay, and then they had the field goal blocks. And today, again, he erases an 11-point deficit in under 2 minutes. Absolutely. The 2nd down play in overtime on him that killed the drive. And that was the game right there. That was their chance in overtime and they squandered it. So he absolutely has to have better situational awareness there. But overall, you put up 373 total yards on the Vikings defense. You are the only reason that your team is in the game at the end of this. You put up 27 points in this game against an awesome defense that brings the heat too, without a run game. I mean, the run game was completely ineffective. That is so impressive. So I still watch him. I have consistently watched him and said, this dude is going to be a superstar. And I think there were a lot of people who wanted him to fail. And there were a lot of people who did their victory laps after week 2. And a lot of people who frankly just haven't been able to view him fully objectively. And that's not to say that he hasn't had some bad games this year, because he has, but the upside has been so evident. The failings of the situation around him with coaching and offensive line play have been so evident. And when things are right with him, because I'm not going to sit here and say that he deserves offensive rookie of the year or anything, right? He hasn't been the best rookie quarterback in his class, but the tools are absurd. The tools are the best in the class. And I just think they're too special for him to not be awesome. And the fact that he also has a good head on his shoulders and has improved, right? It's not linear. It's not just consistent. Oh, he gets better week after week after week after week. He had a really good stretch earlier in the year. Then he had a couple of rough performances. And now he's put together a couple of really good performances back to back. But the trend is upwards overall. And I feel better with Thomas Brown calling the plays than Shane Waldron. I thought Shane Waldron was terrible overall. I mean, I think you're going to be looking at a new coaching staff next season, no matter what, because Eberflus is gone. But it's been an improvement. Caleb is finding a groove right now, and he played an awesome football game. Shout out to Vikings. They hold on to win this one. Sam Darnold played a pretty good game, but I really thought that Caleb was.
I thought Sam Darnold had an excellent game today, man.
Yeah, that was very good.
That overtime drive really impressed me. And these last 2 weeks have been excellent. He played a great game against Tennessee last week, and the overtime drive specifically was really impressive to me because the Vikings offense in general overcame a lot of penalties throughout this game, and Darnold came back with a vengeance every single time. And also, he was able to succeed with them taking away Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
I mean, one, I think it's a kind of a double-edged sword there. One, I think Jetta's helped the entire offense because he took like 2 or 3 guys every play. But that's big. When your number one target, your go-to guy is covered, he found Jordan Addison had a huge game. TJ Hawkinson was all over the field. Sam Darnold, I thought, played an excellent football game today. And that drive in overtime was great.
Yeah.
No, also,
Sammy D was very good. Sammy Dimes.
Dude, I think Caleb Williams and Jared McCain have a chance to defeat homophobia once.
Bro, that's what I'm saying, dude. That's what I'm saying. They have a great deal of responsibility on their shoulders in terms of combating some of these dudes who have these super hyper specific and very exclusive ideas of masculinity. You can paint your nails and still be a fucking dog, bro. You can make TikToks and still be a dog. And I think that the fellas are showing out and they're proving that. And that fires me up. That fires me all the way up. You know, it doesn't fire me up today, Logan. The fact that the Texans and Commanders both got exposed today. They both lost, bad losses. Who do you think got more exposed, Washington or Houston?
H-Town. And I got to tip my cap to you, Carson. You were a little earlier to the Texans not being as good as everybody thought they were, a little bit before me. And the reason I say Houston, I think the Commanders have some glaring flaws too, and they got exposed. The one thing I'll cut them some slack on, they were still without Marshawn Lattimore in this game, and that is their biggest issue to me, is that their secondary continues to get fried, and they have no answers there, and they desperately need Marshawn Lattimore to get on that field. Also, they almost somehow pulled this one out. If Austin Seibert had made the game-tying extra point, you know, they could have forced overtime in this game, but they don't. Return puts them away. The reason I say the Texans, one, I think they had more flaws get exposed today, but also just they have bigger expectations. Texans were a preseason Super Bowl pick for a lot of people, and I just don't even feel like the Texans are remotely close to being Super Bowl contenders. I think the Texans are arguably worse than the Chargers and the Steelers, like when we're looking at real deal contenders, you know? Like,
how are you going to argue they're better?
The only difference is, like, for me against Pittsburgh, I guess, is the CJ Stroud dynamic. With how bad this offense has been in totality, I would still probably take Pittsburgh. They're firmly out of my top 10. They're probably still going to win this division, but they're nowhere near close to being contenders, and that was the expectation, right? It just happens naturally. Last year, you overachieve. You go from worst to first, a regime change, rookie quarterback, rookie head coach, make the playoffs, win a playoff game. Well, you got to go up from here, right? The next step after getting bounced in the second round is, we got to go to the AFC title game. We got to go to a Super Bowl. That's not happening this year. The biggest issue is the interior offensive line. Stroud was under duress all game. He gets sacked 4 times. Mixon gives you 14 carries for 22 yards. And I've known the Titans' D-line is good, but the Texans get no push. And now this Texans flaw has been exposed to the point where teams can key in on it. They know that's a weak point, and they are going to attack you there. And you see this all the way until the end of the game when C.J. Stroud pulls a Dan Orlovsky and steps out of the back of the end zone because he can't get room backed up, and they get a safety that puts this game away. More importantly, there's other areas. They allow Tony Pollard to run for 119 yards in this one on 5 yards per carry. They have the number 20 rushing defense in football. They miss on some big opportunities in this one. Fairbairn misses a game-tying field goal. The bigger one, Nico Collins, has a go-ahead touchdown in this game that gets taken away due to an illegal shift penalty that shoots you in the foot. And again, it's not like this team is devoid of anything good. They have C.J. Stroud. They have Nico Collins. They rack up 8 sacks in this game. This pass rush is awesome.
Yeah.
They're 7th in pressure rate. Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. are all over the field in this game. But what this is going to tell you is, guess what? You can have the most important 2 components to a great football team, a pass rush and a franchise quarterback. But if you got no offensive line and your back end isn't good defensively, you're still susceptible to getting cooked. And those are the biggest holes to me on this team. I don't think the linebackers are great. They can't stop the run. The interior of the offensive line blows. And when you have glaring flaws that teams can attack, you're going to lose some football games. So, look, I think the Texans are still going to make the playoffs, but they are looking more and more close to a first-round exit than they are, to an AFC title game appearance. And that's why I say the Texans, because I don't know if we learned anything necessarily new about the Commanders.
I agree.
Maybe you're a little more disappointed in Jaden because he didn't give you what you've come to expect from him, but I think the Texans have more holes that we didn't expect, and they've been a bigger disappointment. So that's why I say Houston.
I've been banging this drum for a handful of weeks now.
Yeah, I was going to say almost a month
Texans. Now. Yeah. They're just not a very good football team, and we've seen that, right? I mean, they started 5-1, but they're 2-4 since. I do think that their loss was worse to the Titans, and I think that you rattled off a lot of issues in this one. Couldn't stop the run. Defensively, I do think that their pass defense is good. I think that their secondary on the year has been good. I think
Stingley,
that their pass
Lassiter,
rush
they're
is
solid.
awesome. Yeah. This game, though, was bad. I mean, they had 3 horrible breakdowns, 2 of which led to touchdowns. They let up 108 yards and 2 touchdowns
Dude,
just
they
on
allowed
2
a
pass plays.
70-yard TD to Chigakonkwo, man.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. I mean, they should have put some of the circus music on the tail end of that play. It was just ridiculous. Nobody could find the guy. Nobody could tackle him. That was really bad. So there's just very little that they did well in this game. There's really very little that they're doing well overall as a football team right now. But what I thought would be their saving grace, the reason that even as I was like, yeah, I don't love this team, I'm going to hold out a little bit longer before dropping them out of my top 10. You know, this was several weeks ago now, was because of CJ Stroud, because he's a dude who I have so much faith in. He's the sort of dude who I think, as a top 8 quarterback in football, can right the ship for you, can overcome some of these bad circumstances. Early in the year, that's what he was doing. Their offensive line sucked. Their run game, when Mixon was out, was brutally ineffective. They were sitting in 3rd and long all the time, and CJ was just making shit happen. He was digging them out of these holes. He was a human cover-up. He was a human flex seal. And that just hasn't been the case recently, because we can talk about how the line is failing him, and the line is really bad. And in this game, they couldn't run the ball at all. But he is just not playing well. Last 6 weeks, he's averaging 216 yards a game, 6.9 yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns to 5 picks. He's taking almost 4 sacks a game. A lot of that is on the offensive line, but those are negative plays. And a pass rating of under 75. And I do think we've seen several performances, like against Green Bay, for example, where he basically puts up nothing in the box score. But I put more of it on strong defensive performance and the limitations of the offensive personnel around him. This game, I don't feel like that's the case. I mean, he has 2 bad misses that lead to interceptions in this game, and he ends the game taking a safety. And it's like, yeah, he's under duress, but also you just can't take a safety to end the game, man. I'm sorry. You can't step out of the back of the end zone. Like, you got to find a way to make a play there. And he just hasn't been able to do that. And so if you're going to talk about a guy being a fringe superstar or whatever expectations we might have had for CJ in year 2, he's not living up to that standard right now. I think he's a really, really good quarterback. I think he's a top 10 quarterback. But with him playing at this level, the level he's been at over the last 6 weeks, I think Houston is arguably a below average football team, because I look at them and I'm like, yeah, their pass rush is really good. And that's basically it. They have Nico Collins. The receiving weapons are pretty good, but they have a lot of flaws. They have a lot of flaws as a football team. And when CJ's not just doing like that elite quarterback stuff, I don't like them at all. And I do think that he'll play better, but I think even with him playing better, the Chargers are just a really good defense that has a quarterback who is playing at a significantly higher level and who I just think is a good bit better than CJ at this point. And I would take them. The Steelers, their defense is so dominant that when their offense is fine, I'd take them. Like, if we got to wild card weekend and the Texans were hosting either one of those teams, I'd view them as clear favorites over Houston. I might view them as touchdown favorites over Houston. That's where I'm at with them right now. I'm completely out on them winning a playoff game. I've continued to say that the gap between the top 3 teams, the other division frontrunners, the Steelers are leading the division right now. I do view the Ravens as the bigger threat, but that gap has just continued to grow, and this is just another instance of that.
Have you been moved off of like CJ and let's do another quick like would you
Okay.
rather, like
I'm
Jordan
going
Love
to go ahead and say no.
was the guy that was close.
Jordan Love,
I would take Jordan Love.
you would take Jordan. You have been moved on that.
I know the interceptions, and damn, can they be backbreaking sometimes. Jordan Love's a freaking playmaker, man. And that guy just he's Mr. Make It Happen. I want Jordan Love. I really, and I get it. This has been a bad stretch from CJ, and I know he's better at protecting the football. I've been moved by Jordan Love. I think he might be the next. Him and Stafford is a debate for me after Herbert in that last spot. And I know Herbert or Burrow is a debate for some people, but after Herbert, the next guy up to me is either Stafford or Jordan Love. I'm all over
Stafford.
Jordan Love, man.
Oh, all over him. It's Stafford for me. Here's why I'll take CJ. Jordan's still 3 years older. So are we talking about who do we want as our franchise guy or right now?
Well, I
Because if
just
it's
meant
franchise
like
guy, I want CJ.
I'd take Jordan Love too on that, but right
Really?
now,
I mean, I've had them as 7 and 8 in my
yeah,
QB
yeah,
rankings.
as have I.
I'm gonna stick with CJ just because I think Jordan, although he is more of a playmaker, you still get the double-edged sword with him, and he is in a much better offensive situation, in my opinion, because I think the play calling is so much better. I think that the run game is so much more consistently effective. I think that the line is significantly better. The receiving weapons, I mean, Houston at full strength is definitely better, but obviously they don't have Diggs. They haven't been at full strength this year. And I like the depth of the Packers group. So I do think that there is a stability. There is a football IQ with CJ. And it's not like he's a dude who doesn't have the physical tools, right?
No,
We
not at
see him
all.
get outside the pocket and make plays, and he's very accurate. I just think he's slumping right now. And when he's slumping, this football team isn't good, but I still believe in him.
I still believe in CJ too. These are just the minor.
Yeah. Well, that's been close for me. That's been close all year.
What
So I don't
about
think that's crazy.
Kyler or CJ?
Right now, still CJ.
Okay.
I think he's going to get out of this slump. I do. I just think he's not playing good football right now. He's also in a really bad situation, worse situation than a Jordan Love or a
I think he
Kyler.
will. Those are the two guys that I've been moved to I think put above CJ right
Okay.
now.
I
And
mean,
then
those would be my quarterbacks 8 and 9 with CJ
yeah,
at 7.
no,
So
and
it's very
he's
close.
still top 10 for me for sure. And and then I think you get into I don't know who's next, but I don't think they're in the conversation. I guess we get into I like Genos of the world, and that don't get me wrong, I love me
And
some
there's a
Geno,
whole pack of guys.
but yeah, then I think there's a little bit of a drop. So CJ's still
Yeah.
in my top 10, but I do think I've been moved. Jordan, I love Jordan Love is one of my probably 5 to 10 favorite guys to watch in the league right now, man. The way he just I don't know. He don't give a fuck. He's just going. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
throw it down there. We're gonna see what happens.
No, he does do that.
I kind
Yeah,
of
for
love it.
sure.
I kind of love it.
I love it too, bro. We talked about this. I'm a Jordan Love believer. I'm just also a CJ believer. I really like both of those guys. And I do trust CJ a little bit more. And they both had flawed seasons. I would say that Love has had the better season, but Love also has turned the ball over more times per game than anybody else in football. So, you know me, I'm pro playmaking. I can live with some turnovers, but sometimes he takes it too far. All right, Logan. We've covered a lot of the action today. Give me one final shout out. Give me one final standout of the day who you want to show a little love to.
I want to shout out the Lions of Detroit and just some of the historic stuff that they're doing scoring wise. One of my best friends, Angelo, he's a big Lions fan, so he'll hit me up with crazy stats and stuff throughout Sundays. One of the crazy ones that blew my mind today, he said that the Lions have scored on over 50% of their drives this season, which is ridiculous, that they're more likely to score on you than you are to get a stop. And I just dug a little deeper into some of the historical numbers. Right now, this Lions offense is number 4 in points per play since this stat started being tracked in 2003. The offense is right behind them. The 07 Patriots, 2 spots behind them. The 2004 Colts, 1 spot behind them. And the only 3 offenses above them.
Wait, can I guess?
Yeah, go ahead. Go for it.
Well, I was going to guess the 07 Pats.
It's kind of surprising a little
2013 bit. Broncos.
They're better. The Lions are in points per play.
Mother of God. The 2011 Saints.
You got the right year.
2011 Packers?
2011 Packers are number 2.
Wow. All right, I've had enough. I can't believe the 2013 Broncos are there. They average 37 points a game. What's the guy got to do?
Number 3.
Is it 2019 Ravens or something?
The Ravens are close. Number 3 is the 2016 Falcons of all teams.
Well,
and
that was
number 1 is the 2018 Chiefs. So,
that's another insane one. Yeah.
They're number 4 in points per play since that stat started being tracked. They're also number 11 in points per game in the Super Bowl era with 33.6. Again, I think there are some dominant offenses in the league today. I think Philadelphia is really, really good. They're prone to popping off. The Lions, to me, are still in a class of their own with schematics, with play calling, with talent. They're unreal, and that's why they're my NFC favorite still right now, man. The 52 piece on the Jaguars was unreal, and the Colts defense isn't bad, but they still handle business. They are frankly ridiculous, man. And they're doing truly historic stuff on offense right now. So I just want to give them a big shout out.
They are doing truly historic stuff on offense, Logan. But I feel like the story of the year is the defense and what they're continuing to do, even without Aiden Hutchinson, without Alex Anzalone now, just over the totality of the year. They're allowing 16.6 points per game. So this has been an amazing offense for 3 years. The offense has only gotten better. I do think that it's the best in football, and I do think it's the best that it's been right now compared to the last couple of seasons. But I think the bigger difference is on the defensive end, and that just makes them a juggernaut who feel like they can win however they want, right? I mean, you look at some of these games and it's like, okay, they overcome 5 turnovers against the Texans and they come up with a bunch of crucial stops in that second half and they get points when they need it. They have just some of these absolute bludgeonings of the year, right? Against the Jags, against the Cowboys, where they are beating teams by 40 points. They can win a shootout against a Minnesota. They can jump out to a massive lead against a Green Bay. Like, these are good teams. These are basically their last 7 games. I mean, all of them fall into one of those categories and they're convincingly winning almost every single one. I do want to give a big shout out to Aaron Glenn because I think what he's done with this defense has been so impressive. And we talk about Ben Johnson and he's awesome, but Aaron Glenn is another dude who I think has to get a head coaching job. And that'll test the Dan Campbell regime a little bit if he loses 2 elite coordinators. But those guys are both killing it. And you mentioned the offense, Logan. But along with the defensive improvement, Detroit currently has the 6th best point differential per game in the NFL history since the merger. Only behind the 07 Pats, the 99 Rams, the 91 Washington, 98 Vikings, 85 Bears. That's the company they're in, bro. They're beating teams by 16 points per game. So I just don't want to take that for granted because I feel like a lot of takes right now are going to be, oh, the Eagles are soaring. Fly, Eagles, fly. They're the best team in football. And it's like, yeah, what the Lions are doing right now isn't going to grab your attention in the same way. That's because they've been doing it end to end this season. They just take team souls. And I think that they do that so dependably. And the numbers reflect it. Like, they're in a special echelon in NFL history in terms of their consistency doing that. So I think the Eagles are amazing. But, like, let's not forget how insane it is what the Lions are doing.
The only thing I want to add to that is defensively, they do need to stay healthy. They've got bit by that bug a little bit. Obviously, we know about Hutchinson, but today we saw Terrion Arnold was out, and they picked on Vildor, the dude that replaced him. That he was getting picked on bad. I don't think that dude can play meaningful snaps for you, so he needs to stay healthy. Also, Carlton Davis left the game with an injury too. So there was another guy too. It was it an O-lineman? Somebody else major got hurt.
Taylor Decker.
Right?
Yeah.
Lions just got to stay healthy because that's the only thing that I feel like could derail Detroit at this point in the season. Most importantly, defensively. We talked about Anzalone and Hutchinson. Nowatzki stepped up in a big way, and I've been talking about him for a couple of weeks. He's had some really good performances. He's a little frustrating in coverage sometimes, but every other area, I think he checks the box, especially in the run game. So, yeah, that's a crazy stat, though, man. 60-point differential. I just hope Detroit can stay healthy, man. I want every team to stay injury-free, but Detroit's
a good guy.
Yeah.
Because you're just such naturally a good guy, Logan.
You always want to see it. Always feels
of course.
It always feels a little cheap when you get a win against, if a Brady is out or something like that.
Dude, I was worried that Saquon hurt his balls in the game earlier
right?
today. I lost my mind for a second. I said, please tell me that he didn't hurt his balls, and then he was okay. I want to just very quickly talk about Anthony Richardson in this game because I have a feeling some people are going to look at the stat sheet. They're going to say, oh, classic Anthony Richardson. He can't complete a pass. He had a lot of really good plays in this game that didn't end up showing up in the stat sheet. He threw an excellent pass that should have been a touchdown that was just flat out dropped by the tight end. He threw a beautiful deep ball down the sideline. The receiver couldn't get both of his feet in bounds. I think he had like 100 passing yards in this game that were negated by penalties. And on top of that, he made a bunch of amazing plays with his legs. So I thought that Anthony Richardson played a very, very solid football game. I thought first half he was dealing. Second half, he slowed down. You got to put up more than 6 points. All I'm saying is if you're just looking at the box score, you're probably going to have a more negatively skewed view of this game. I've been really encouraged by what we've seen from AR the last 2 weeks. It's going to be up and down, inconsistent, as we've talked about, but I believe in him. I think he's so insanely talented.
I mean, the biggest thing that we've always harped on throughout this year with Anthony Richardson is when you have a guy that can do the difficult things so easily.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, you just got to figure out the simple stuff of playing quarterback. Great. You can do one things that other quarterbacks can't dream about. I mean, the Colts are consistently running on 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 6s. They're running QB power, and nobody can tackle him.
Yeah.
He's just running over. This is Cam Newton, Josh Allen type shit that they're doing with Anthony Richardson. And I know that those are the comps that people always point to, but yeah, I mean, let's run QB power with Bryce Young on 3rd and 3. You know what I mean? Like,
all right.
not
Yeah.
not to poke at
No,
the guy, but again,
no, he would perish on
it,
the field.
he just makes it look easy. And as you said, Alec Ogletree drops a walk-in touchdown in this game that I think swings it a little bit. That makes a difference, just in terms of momentum and how this game was going. I agree with you. I thought he played a much better game than the box score suggested, and I was almost out on Anthony Richardson when this press conference stuff went down and how bad he was playing. He's slowly making me a believer, man. I've liked what we've seen from Richardson these past couple of weeks.
I agree. Also, it was Andrew Ogletree. I knew you said Alec. And I said, hold on.
Who the hell is? Oh, I'm thinking of Alec Pierce. I got the names mixed up. But yeah.
Well, Alec Ogletree was a linebacker. He was a linebacker back in the day.
Shout out.
It did exist. Yeah, man, I really like AR. And listen, I think that it's going to be a while before he's a consistent star. But give him another year or two, I think that he is clearly trending in the right direction. I think that there's a really good chance that he gets there. Okay, I'm going to give my shout out real quick to the Miami Dolphins, dude, and specifically their offense, because they were basically down and out at 2-6, right? Tua had just come back and they lost the game to the Bills. And over the last 5 weeks with Tua out there, they're putting up 29 points per game. Tua has a 116 passer rating with 11 touchdowns to 1 pick. He's averaging over 255 yards per game. And now we're sitting here in this very underwhelming race for the last wildcard spot in the AFC, and they have the 6th easiest strength of schedule remaining, and they're only 1.5 games back. Do I think that they are going to grab that spot? No. I think that Denver's a better football team, and Denver also has a game and a half up on them. Denver continues to impress me more. I think that their offense looks better and better and has improved as the year has gone along. I know that a lot of people get mad at me with what I've said about Bo. Bo in the first month was a different quarterback. Bo was terrible in the first month. I hope we can all agree upon that. He did not belong out there as a starter on an NFL field, but he's gotten much better. I'm not as high on him as some others. And, his specific vitality to the success of this offense, I think a lot of what he does is replaceable by other guys.
You know what that means, Carson? You know what that means?
Well, I don't believe.
I believe, bro.
I know you believe. I know you believe. And you're the believer on the show. And that's a very important role that you play. But Denver's good. I mean, they obviously have the best defense of any of the teams in the conversation for that wild card spot. Miami is still in a tough spot because this is a year they wanted to make the playoffs, and now we're giving them praise for being here at 5-6. And the Tua injury derailed a lot. I also don't think Tua is a guy you should be paying more than $50 million a year. So big picture, yeah, don't love where they're at all. But they were in a really, really, really dark spot. Now, at least they have some light at the end of the tunnel here. And what has been their bread and butter, that offense with Waddle and Tyreek, all these guys playing to the best of their abilities, that's starting to come back. And Jonnu Smith has been so good for them in recent weeks. So they get my shout out.
I like it. I agree with you. I think I'm probably still taking Denver to win that last spot, but it's nice that Miami didn't just, tuck their tail between their legs and, just roll over on this season. They're not going to go down without a fight. And somehow, with how bad this AFC wildcard race is, there is a chance somehow. Dolphins got to win out, but there is a very slim chance that the Dolphins could sneak into the playoff party.
I don't think they need to win out. I think if they get 5 out of 6, then I think if you get to 10 wins, you're getting the spot for sure.
Hold up. We got before we get out of here, we got a very generous donation from Kahari.
Oh, thank you.
Who is offensive rookie of the year right now? I think Nix has passed Jaden Daniels. I think Nix has also surpassed Jaden Daniels, but I hate when we go to Bo Nix as the next guy. Why are we going to Bo Nix over Brock Bowers? or
You think that Bo Nix has surpassed Jaden Daniels?
bro, Carson, I want you to look at Bo Nix's stats over the last 4 games. I know
Bro,
Jaden's
I just
still
think that
hurt.
that's crazy. Jaden literally transformed an offense. The Commanders were number 1 in points per drive until like last week, bro. And he walked into a situation with mediocre skill position talent, with a below average line. I think that that's crazy.
Hey, I'm gonna let you finish, but Bo Nix over the last 4 games,
I understand. He's playing much better.
65% completion, 2,500. Oh wait, bro, why are y'all giving me all
2,500
12? I was
yards.
about
I'm
to
going to
say,
call
bro,
cap on that.
these are for all 12. Hold your horses. Hold your horses. My fault. My fault.
Listen, I think that the statistical case is going to be much closer than their actual impact on the
All
field.
I'm saying is 68% completion, 1,000 yards, 8 TDs to 1 pick, 106 passer rating. Bo's been playing good
Logan,
football.
he has, but the offensive rookie of the year race does not take place over 4 weeks. It takes place over 17 games of football. Do you think that the difference in offensive talent around these guys is the reason that the Broncos are still 22nd in points per drive and the
I mean,
Commanders
I
are
think the
second? This is
Broncos
coming into today.
I think the
It's
Broncos
not good. It's not good.
It
Is the
sucks.
Commander's situation good? Is the Commander's skill position
Yeah.
talent around him good?
I think
I don't
objectively
agree.
you have Terry
You came into
McLaurin,
this
you have
year
Brian
and you
Robinson
thought
Jr. No. I mean, Jaden's been a huge component of this, but the offensive line is better than I thought. The skill position talent is better than I
I
thought.
don't
Yeah.
think the offensive line is good. I think that everything they do is scheming around the offensive line, trying to get ahead of
I mean,
the
I
down
don't
and
know.
distance,
I
trying to
like
pick up
some of the
yards
guys. I
early,
like
trying to
Alec
get the ball
Reddy
out
up front.
quickly.
I like the center that they brought in
Biotish,
from.
yeah, Biotish is good.
Yeah, I like some of their they're better than I thought. I'm not saying that it's a great line or a great. I think the Broncos' offense is objectively bad around Bo, though.
I think so too, but it's also over the course of the year a bad offense. They have been playing good offense in recent weeks. They are still over the course of the year a bad offense, whereas the Commanders to me are easily the most surprising elite
but-
offense, and I think that Jaden Daniels is the biggest reason for that. Kingsbury deserves credit.
It's close.
Terry's been awesome.
It's close, but I'd say with Jaden has not played good football these last couple of weeks. I'm saying he's closed the margins.
Quarterback for the first 4 weeks. This feels like recency bias. Logan, that's not a
You
false.
need to believe, Carson. If you say another negative thing about Bo, man, I might.
Bro, my point is,
act up.
I think you are overvaluing the recent stretch of 4 games compared to every other stretch of 4 games.
I think Bo's been airing that hoe out, man. I think he's
no, Logan. He didn't complete a pass beyond the line of scrimmage in like 2 of his first 3 games, deep into the game. He had negative passing yards.
Bo's got it now, bro. I believe.
Okay, I listen. If you want to say he's been playing better over the last 4 weeks, that's fine.
Bo knows football.
Dude, you love Bo Nix. You love Bo Nix.
But
I think that's crazy. I think that didn't you have Jaden like 5th in the MVP race at midseason?
So did you. Don't act like you didn't, bro.
That's why I still have him as offensive rookie of the year, and I don't think it's close.
I would have Brock Bowers over both of these dudes.
I would hear that case before. I would.
Why isn't anybody talking about Bucky Irving, man?
Okay, listen to this. Jaden Daniels is tied for 8th in the league in yards per pass attempt with Justin Herbert at 7.9. Bo is God knows where. He's not in the top 25. He's somewhere way down where I can't see because StatMuse won't allow me to see it. While being the second best pure rushing quarterback in football. I mean, Josh, you could argue, but Josh has not used his legs nearly as much as Jaden this year.
You put Lamar first.
Jaden's averaging 5.6 yards per rushing attempt. That's
Drake
fifth
May
in football across
unfortunately.
positions. Not as a runner.
Drake May's averaging like 9.2 yards per carry.
He's a dog as a scrambler. Yeah, but he's not running the ball nearly as much. Jaden also has 556 rushing yards. That's second among all quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Leading out a way better offense. And he's been doing it all year. And he hasn't been as good as he was over the last 4 weeks. I just think you're giving Bo like the most improved within season, and the standard that Jaden set for himself is so high.
Maybe.
Now you're underappreciating what he did earlier in the year.
You might be spitting.
That's my feeling. That's my feeling on the whole race.
Jaden and Bo, I think, is still close. Is what I'm with how Bo has played and how Jaden has played over the last couple of weeks. I think the gap is closed. All of that to say Brock Bowers deserves this award, or hell, the guy who probably deserves this award the most is Joe Alt, but we would never give an offensive lineman the award. He probably deserves it the most. I would give it to Bowers, though. And shout out Neighbors. Shout out Bucky Irvin. I'm trying to think if there's any other standout rookies that we're sleeping on right now, but I'd give it to Bowers.
Marvin Harrison Jr. has been solid.
He has been. That is a good shout.
I would go Jaden 1, then I would go Bowers 2. I mean, Bowers has been the most productive.
Bo's not on your ballot.
How long is my ballot? How many names do I get in my ballot? 50? He's on there somewhere if I go 50 deep. Well, like, here's the thing. Bo hasn't been better than Drake May, in my opinion. Drake May just hasn't played as much.
I mean, I think Drake May's been – I think Caleb's been really good recently too. Like,
yeah, Caleb doesn't really have the statistical case, but I
think Drake's been playing good ball too.
He's just been inconsistent.
Drake's not a bad shout.
I think Drake's been the second best rookie quarterback after Jaden.
I can understand that argument. Drake's done some jaw dropping stuff in the worst situation of any of these quarterbacks. I mean, the Patriots situation is the worst.
I just think, bro, absolutely, that's the worst offensive situation in football. When Jaden comes out and puts up 350 total yards of offense and multiple touchdowns and leads his team to score 26 points, and then we're like, yeah, it's one of his worst games of the season, and you compare that to Bo does the same thing, and we go, holy shit, did you see Bo Nixon's stat line? And now we're actually saying Bo is like the offensive rookie.
Damn, maybe the expectations kind of have framed.
That's what I think.
That's
my opinion.
That's a good argument.
All right. On that note, thank you very much for your generous donation. Kara, I hope we're saying that correctly. And with that, we're done here. Appreciate you guys. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, as always, there is plenty more Nerd Sesh content, all of our NFL stuff, all of our NBA stuff on our YouTube channel. That includes all of our full shows. That also includes all of our YouTube video breakdowns, our video essays on both the NBA and the NFL. So you can find all of that on our YouTube channel. You can listen to the show across all audio platforms. You can follow us across social, TikTok and Instagram at Nerd Sesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh. And you can join our Discord if you want to chat with the gang. You can also check out our merch. That is at breakingt.com. The link to that and the link to join our Discord is at the link tree across all of our social media bios. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.